Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you Monk's Hood by Ellis Peters. And as you can see down there at the bottom, it is a medieval novel of suspense. So this is sort of a curious subtitle, right? The book was not written in the medieval period, so to call it a medieval novel seems a little tricky. But then other books in this series I have seen subtitled A Novel of Medieval Suspense, which lead me to wonder, was medieval suspense different from Renaissance suspense or ancient Greek suspense? This is all kind of a big joke because the publishers are just trying to say it's a novel of suspense set in the medieval period. So I think the subtitle does get that across, despite some teasing from people like me. So this book is the third in the Brother Cadfael series, very, very well known. So we can't really say it is, it's forgotten. The publishing date, copyright date is 1981. And Brother Cadfael was really known very well because of the BBC production starring, I think it was Derek Jacobi, and the books really have an enormous amount of respect out there in the world, not only as mysteries, but also as historical novels of a time and a place. The first line of this book tells you exactly when it's set. The year is 1183. It's after the Crusades, which Brother Cadfael has taken part in, and he is now a monk, a Benedictine monk. So the title is actually kind of one of those perfect titles that works on a bunch of different levels, in that, of course, Brother Cadfael does wear a monk's hood. He is cloistered at a monastery, although he's not stuck there. He goes out and about quite a bit. It's in Shrewsbury, England, and but the other meaning of monk's hood is it's a plant, also known as wolfsbane, and it turns out that it's one of those plants that is highly poisonous and dangerous to people and animals if ingested, but does have medicinal properties when used as an ointment. So my very first personal introduction to monk's hood was years ago, when I saw it at the garden center, and I said, "Oh, this looks pretty cool. Maybe I'll get some to plant." And the guy at the greenhouse said to me, "Watch out, that stuff will kill you." So I said, "Oh, you're kidding me, right?" And he said, "No, it can kill you. It's really, really dangerous." And I said, "Well, why then would you be selling it at the garden center?" And he said, "Because the deer don't bother it." So if any of you live in an area where deer are just embarked on a constant onslaught against your garden and your trees and your shrubberies and your plants, you may understand the lure of planting monk's hood, although I decided not to buy it because it kind of wigged me out. So when I saw this book at a used bookstore, I was reminded of earlier Brother Cadfael books that I had read. I had forgotten about him for a while. It's a forgotten mystery, and I was glad to pick it up, especially because it's early in the series. It is the third book in the series, and I was reminded that I read some of the very late installments in the Cadfael series. I think there might have been between 18 and 20 of them, and the last couple were a little disappointing because they felt very much like historical novels. They were very heavy and they were not easy to read, and the mystery component was really at a minimum. And so I think those later books kind of put me off for a while. But I remembered how much I enjoyed the earlier books, and knowing this was the third, I went back to it, and I was very glad I did, because this book shows what Ellis Peters could really do. It was just mentioned that Ellis Peters was a pseudonym for Edith Pargeter. She was an English woman who made a living for herself. She was very much into Czechoslovakian literature back in the day when that was a country, and did translations and was very involved with Czech literature, but also wrote dozens of novels under a bunch of pseudonyms and really supported herself as a writer, which, as we all know, is extremely hard to do nowadays, and I'm sure it was hard then too. Interesting thing about Edith Pargeter is that although she was an English woman, she was of Welsh ancestry. And the Welsh connection plays a large part in this book because Brother Cadfael is of Welsh extraction. And in this book, he has to go up to Wales to help out some fellow brothers and do some sleuthing around. And it really sounds like a very cool and beautiful place. I've never been there. I once almost went to Cardiff, Wales to see a concert, but that didn't happen. But I was really looking forward to it because it sounds so beautiful and so lush and so unspoiled. And the people, at least in Peters's books, are really described as very dignified and proud and, somewhat serious, but still able to have a good time. Very much their own culture. They're not English, and they will be the first to tell you they are not English. And one of the plot points in this book kind of centers on the differences between Welsh law and English law for a piece of property that sort of straddles the border. So let me just tell you a little bit about the plot. It basically starts out, Brother Cadfael is an herbalist. He makes medications and treatments for ailing people, and he's very, very good at it. He lives, in this brotherhood, and I always kind of I've said this before, I really like books that are set in sort of a microcosm. You can kind of see this small world and its goings on, and the author has a lot of fun with the different types, the different characters in the monastery. Some very devout and serious, others just in it for the glory and the power, some really smart, some who are doofuses. She kind of gets the politics of the monastery down very, very nicely. I mean, not unlike, any office situation today or, corporate America, right? There's great people and there's horrible people, and you need to know who's who and who to be friends with and who to stay clear of. So the setting of the monastery is very, very, very well realized. The characters in there are fun and nicely distinguished. But what happens is it's a little complicated. What an older gentleman and his wife have done is they have willed their manor to the monastery. And in exchange for that property, they will be taken care of by the monks on the monks' land for the rest of their lives. They'll be fed. The horses will be stabled and fed. It's I know it's almost sort of like, I don't know, an annuity in a way. We say, okay, I don't feel like dealing with this house anymore. I'll give it to the monks. The monks will take care of me until I die. So this man and his wife, move onto the monastery lands, and shortly thereafter, the man is dead. He dies horribly after ingesting monkshood. And Cadfael knows the source of that monkshood ointment. He made it himself in his laboratory, and he's super, super careful to make sure that nobody gets their hands on it and it's not used improperly. But clearly someone got a hold of it and mixed it into this man's dinner, and he dies a horrible death. And so the story becomes about really who killed the guy and why. I mean, it is a murder mystery, so that probably doesn't come as much as a surprise. What I found interesting about the plot here is it's a good plot. It's a good story. I think I probably guessed who it was, but I really liked the fact that the crime was so well motivated and so based in a social understanding of the time and the place that it felt almost like a very welcome history lesson in differences between Welsh and English culture, Welsh and English law, and so forth. So you really you learn as you read, and that's a nice thing to happen when you're reading a suspense novel. What I'll say is, I don't think these books are easy to read or fast to read. They're written quite seriously. I picture the author sitting at her typewriter or writing out longhand and considering every single word as she puts it down on the page. The writing is not breezy. It's historical fiction-y, lots of long paragraphs and plenty of exposition. All the exposition is done well. I thought early on in an early chapter, one of the chapters is basically kind of an information dump, which isn't the best way to get information to the readers, but hey, it's Brother Cadfael, and we love him, and we love Ellis Peters, so we can cut her some slack here. So the things for me, that I really enjoy about this series is, for whatever bizarre reason, I can't tell you the reason, I've always kind of been into the medieval period. I took lots of medieval history courses in college and medieval literature, and I love medieval art. I don't know, it's just a period that I really like, and so it's nice to read fiction well-written fiction set in the medieval period. So if you don't know much about the medieval period and you want to learn more about it and monasticism and life back in the day, this is a good way to do that. But really, the main attraction here is Brother Cadfael himself, who is the man I want to be. I mean, he is my hero. Because he's just a mensch. He is the coolest guy. Everything about him is great, which probably makes him somewhat unbelievable because nobody is that much of a paragon of perfection. But I'll put up with a hero in fiction who is a paragon like this. I mean, he is both self-assured and modest and humble. He is not afraid of getting his hands dirty. He is out there working in the fields and tilling the soil and helping with the sheep, in addition to doing his herbs, his herbalism and his natural cures. He's a wonderful mentor to younger clerics. He has a like of young people. He kind of looks at them and remembers who he was back in the day and what his challenges were and what he went through. And so he can look at younger people and have that kind of very avuncular feeling towards them. So he's warm. He's got a lot of warmth in him. And he is devout. He believes in God. He believes in the graciousness of God. He took his vows voluntarily, not because he was expected to or he had no other choice or he was forced into it. So he is a man of faith, and he lives his faith and is a true champion of the downtrodden and the falsely accused. In this book, the most obvious suspect for the murderer is the man's stepson. And after talking with the stepson, Cadfael is convinced of his innocence, and he's going to stop at nothing to prove this young man innocent. And so Cadfael's not above, kind of scooting around the rules when he has to, or knowing he's going to get in trouble. But his kind of philosophy is better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So he kind of operates within the system. He's very, very savvy that way. And he's just a likable person of the highest moral fiber. And I think that is awesome. He's got a very nice friendship with, there's a deputy sheriff here, Hugh Berengar, who I think plays actually even more of a role in other books in the series. And the two of them, even though they're not always in agreement in terms of what's going on with the crime in the book, they have complete respect for each other. They are friends. They listen to each other. So to know Brother Cadfael is to like and respect him. Unless you're like some jerk who's a power-hungry blankety blank who sees Brother Cadfael as a threat, because people like that often see, like, evil people often see kind people as a threat. I have found that to be a theme in my life, that I've known lots of instances where really awful people felt really threatened by really good, nice, decent people. It's just a thing, but I'll leave that for the psychologists to comment on. Please feel free to comment below, as always. So, spending time with Brother Cadfael is just a pleasure. You want to hang out with him. You enjoy. He in addition to all these wonderful characteristics that I've talked about, he's smart. So he makes a good investigator, and he gets people to talk, and is just in general kind of like a shining light here in the Dark Ages, which that's not really a fair name for the era. I don't think it's used much anymore, because there were plenty of learning going on and plenty of things happening, and lots of great art and so forth in the Middle Ages or the medieval period. But the book runs, I think it comes in about 220 pages. Maybe it's a little long. Maybe it could have been 20 pages earlier, shorter. I like that you can read the book without constantly running to your dictionary. Now, there are some terms that you're just going to have to look up. I mean, unless you're a medieval scholar, you're going to have to look some of these things up. And I guess I had sort of wished that the author defined some of those terms in context in the book to help readers. And she doesn't really do that. That's not much of a criticism, because plenty of writers do the same thing. But you will have to look the occasional thing up, but not a lot. And when she does go into her descriptions or her explanations, they always feel very scholarly and right on target. She writes with great authority. And that's a nice thing too, because you feel like you're in the hands of a really good writer and historian who knows what the heck she is talking about. So that's what I've got to say about Monk's Hood by Ellis Peters. There's, you can see on the cover, the bottle of Monk's Hood ointment that is the downfall of the murdered man. It's fun to read about herbalism. I don't know much about it. I get the sense that it is to be taken very seriously. So much folk medicine is based on herbs. And another author that I love, who also wrote about the medieval period and other periods, Norah Lofts, often has characters who are herbalists. Oftentimes they're women kind of living on their own in a cottage in the woods with a reputation for being witches. And so, but they have eye of newt and wing of bat, in their little jars, and they do have the cure for what ails you, usually. So combine a really interesting historical period with good mystery, with a wonderful protagonist, with good relationships, with a well-realized setting, not only in England, but also Wales. And you've got really a terrific book to read. Like I said, don't expect the pages to fly quickly. You have to pay attention. You have to read. You can't just fly through, this is not a 220-page book with 100 chapters. It's a 220-page book with 11 chapters. So each chapter feels like a little bit of a task. I don't mean that in a bad way, but you do have to sort of pay close attention, and it rewards close reading. And I think if you have never read a Brother Cadfael, this would be a really good one to start with. Another one that I really liked is The Sanctuary Sparrow. But stick with, say, the first 10, 12 books, because I think they're probably the best. So many authors do kind of lose steam after writing, so many books with their formula. That's what people love. People love the formula, but it can get, old. I just want to mention one thing. I think that Brother Cadfael's spiritual successor in the modern era is Mara from the Number One Ladies Detective Agency books by Alexandra McCall Smith, where she is also a kind, understanding person who values her relationships. Her mysteries are not nearly as traditional as Brother Cadfael's. There's really not. You don't read a Mara book for the mysteries, because they're generally pretty thin on that. You read it for the characters and the relationships. But with Ellis Peters, you get both. You get a good mystery story, and you get a great cast of characters, and a satisfying conclusion, and, at least for me, the desire to read more by her. I think what I want to do is look into some of the other pseudonyms and non-Cadfael books and try some of those. Because isn't that what it's all about, right? Trying new things. It's nice to go back to your comfort food, but I'm going to be on the lookout for other non-Cadfael books, and I think they're not usually too hard to find. The books were pretty popular, so I'll read another book by this author, and I'll be back with more information for you. So on that note, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please, as always, feel free to leave comments below. All comments are good comments, as long as they're nice, and I will be back next time. Thanks, and good night.